Today I'm at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, and I came across this car. It's a 1986 Ford Taurus. And you might think at first, why would this even be in a museum? But the truth is, this car was really groundbreaking for its time. It revitalized the American car industry at a point when it was really struggling. And on a personal note, it's significant to me because my dad actually had a 1986 Ford Taurus, and I remember getting it when I was a kid, and it was red just like this one. It was his company car, and since his company paid for the gas, it was really our family car. We went everywhere in it because it was free. And so seeing this car here, again, it brings back a lot of memories for me.
The traditional vacation in the family car. Except one thing's changed. The family car. The new Ford Taurus. One car designed to meet all your...
In the early 80s, the American car makers were losing a lot of ground to the Japanese companies. Toyota and Honda were building cars that were more reliable, they were fuel efficient, they were modern. They were what the American consumer wanted. And the American car companies were still building these real boxy, outdated, less efficient cars. The Japanese cars looked fresh, and their quality and attention to detail were resetting the standard in the automotive industry. And on top of that, the oil crisis of the 70s had pushed people toward these smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. And by the 80s, the Japanese had developed this reputation for reliability that really wasn't there in the very beginning, and they had these advanced designs. The American companies, by contrast, were really slow to innovate, and they were dealing with issues like poor quality control and recalls. For instance, the cars back then that the Americans were building were still rear-wheel drive. The Japanese cars had gone to front-wheel drive. Ford realized that they needed to make a major change, and they invested $3.5 billion in 1980s money to develop the Taurus. They created what they called Team Taurus, which broke down traditional silos so that the engineers and designers and marketers were all working together. They studied customer feedback through focus groups and surveys. They worked with their dealers trying to figure out what they thought their customers wanted. They were benchmarking against the Japanese and European cars that were setting the trend. And the message was really clear after all of this research. The Americans wanted better fuel economy, they wanted the reliability, they wanted a modern design that wasn't going to look outdated in a few years. They wanted comfortable, user-friendly interiors and attention to detail. And so Ford took all of this into account, and they built this car around those needs, those desires. The Ford Taurus broke away from that boxy, three-box design that we had been stuck with for so many years. It had rounded aerodynamic styling, flush-mounted glass. It had integrated headlights and mirrors built into the doors to reduce the drag. The dashboard had a tendency to wrap around the driver, giving it a more modern cockpit-like feel versus the flat dashboards that we'd had for so many years. And this was a huge shift for Ford, and they really bet big on it. But it paid off. The Taurus launched in 1986. It was immediately successful. It won Motor Trend's Car of the Year that year, and they sold over 200,000 units in that very first year. Eventually, this became the number one selling car in America. This car didn't just save Ford, it showed that an American automaker could compete with the Japanese brands and win. And it set a new standard for the industry, pushing their competitors, GM and Chrysler, to innovate and improve also. And seeing this car here in the museum, it's a reminder of how important it was, considering the fact that it's displayed right here next to this Ford Mustang. This is Ford Mustang serial number 001, the very first one. So it shows how much Ford valued this car. I hate to put them in the same category. They're not in the same category. But from a business standpoint for Ford, this Taurus was a really, really big deal. So it's just something I saw, and considering that it had a little bit of sentiment for me, I thought I'd share it. I'll see you down the road.